Which 7 banned engines were too powerful for America? Have you ever wondered why your grandpa's old V8 sedan still purrs like a lion every morning, while your neighbor's brand new SUV throws a tantrum after just 3 months? What if I told you that some machines from decades ago weren't just reliable, they were too powerful for their own good? But this time, by popular demand from our fans, we're not talking about cars that lived forever. We're talking about engines that were forced to die young. You see, throughout American automotive history, there's been a small group of power plants built with one goal in mind: domination. These engines didn't just outperform their rivals, they embarrassed national icons. And that's exactly why they were banned. They were too good, too fast, too advanced for the rules of the time. Some were shut out of NASCAR for being too fast. Some were targeted by the government for emissions. And others, well, they simply made Corvettes look like learner cars. Strangely, no official documents ever fully explained the bans. Only whispers remain, leaked memos, forgotten warehouse builds, legends that mysteriously vanished from final brochures. The kind of stories that sound like urban myths until you hear them roar to life at 7,000 RPM. So if you're someone who believes the real truth is always hidden behind flashy marketing, you're in the right place. Because we're digging up the legends that corporate America tried to bury. Engines too wild for the showroom, too dangerous for the racetrack, and too beloved to ever truly die. Don't forget to hit that like button if you love machines that defy time. Subscribe for more outlaw horsepower, and share this video so more gearheads can help uncover this top secret list. Now then, let's kick things off with number 7. Oldsmobile 455 Rocket. In the early 1970s, if you were a young buck with a few bucks and big dreams of ruling Main Street, you had 2 options. Either grab a Chevy SS to flex the badge, or roll up in an Oldsmobile 455 Rocket, the kind of machine that with just a light tap on the gas made every car behind you vanish, like a scene from Star Trek. While Chevy and Pontiac were yelling horsepower numbers like they were at a county fair, Oldsmobile engineers were quietly perfecting the art of low-end devastation. This beast made 500 pound-feet of torque at just 3,200 RPM, enough to tow a battleship, or more importantly, leave a 446-pack sitting there, wondering what the hell just happened. Some folks joked it was a grandpa's car. That is, until you looked under the hood and found a block with main webs thicker than waffles, cylinder walls strong enough to lift weights, and internals so overbuilt they could be stretched into 451 cubic inches, with the right tools and a bit of garage magic. And the insurance companies, they weren't laughing. The second they saw a 455 badge premiums skyrocketed like gas prices in a panic. Young guys couldn't afford to keep them, and many had to sell their dream cars before they even made it out of their 20s. But the ones who held on, they're grinning in their garages now, because that so-called old man car, it didn't need to scream. It just walked past you without a sound and never looked back. Today, the numbers matching Rocket 455 isn't just valuable, it's sacred. And that's exactly why this was the first engine real muscle car fans voted to put on this list. Not because it was flashy, not because it screamed the loudest, but because those who drove one knew the truth. Real power doesn't ask for permission, it just moves. Pontiac 455 HO. In 1971, as government suits and insurance bean counters sharpened their knives, Pontiac slipped one last weapon past the gatekeepers, the 455 HO. It looked like just another big block, but under the hood was a middle finger to emissions bureaucracy and corporate politics. Officially rated at 335 horsepower and 480 pound-feet of torque, The 455 HO was sandbagged harder than a flood barrier. Real-world tests clocked the quarter mile at 13.9 seconds factory stock. And yet, GM acted like it was just fine. Yeah, and Keith Richards is just sort of famous. One old school fan still remembers his '71 Le Mans 455 H04 speed. He didn't need to shift hard, just let the clutch out and hang on. It didn't rev, it launched. The car moved like it had secrets. And maybe it did. Rumor has it, the 455 HO outshined so many internal rivals, Olds Buick, even the Corvette, that GM buried it to keep the brand hierarchy intact. Don't show up the plastic fantastic, they whispered. So like many great things, it was quietly choked off by emissions politics and padded dashboards. But here's the kicker. These engines never die. Today, 455 HOs still terrorize quarter miles, Power Pro touring builds and snap necks at cars and coffee meets. Mechanics say they age in reverse, like they're just warming up after 50 years. This wasn't just an engine. It was Pontiac's last war cry, built to crush pavement, silenced by suits. One former Pontiac line worker recalled, when they canceled the HO, we knew it wasn't about emissions. It was about keeping Corvette's ego intact. And if you've ever driven or owned one of these beasts, let us know in the comments. What did it feel like to command that kind of power? Buick Nailhead 401. On paper, the Buick Nailhead 401 didn't scream for attention. It didn't rev to the moon. It didn't wear bold decals or chrome valve covers the size of Texas. What it did do quietly and confidently was twist the earth off its axis at 425 pound-feet of torque, delivered right at 2,800 RPM. It was a mechanical introvert, a genius in a room full of show-offs. While other big blocks boasted high flow heads and wide breathing lungs, the Nailhead had tiny valves, almost comically small, like it borrowed them from a lawnmower. But that was the secret. Those tight ports concentrated airflow like a fire hose through a garden nozzle, dense, direct, and devastating down low. The result was a street machine that didn't need to scream. It just moved. You didn't drive it. You leaned into it like a diesel locomotive in loafers. But here is the tragedy. Hot rodders of the era didn't get it. They tried to rev it high, slapped on carb setups that choked it, or dismissed it as a weirdo. Some even called it backwards. So it got benched, swapped out, forgotten, until decades later. Now it's a cult legend. Builders have learned to embrace its simplicity. No frills, no electronics, no fragile emissions gear. Just solid cast-iron engineering, a cam profile built like a torque sledgehammer, and a visual design that looked like it came from a steampunk factory. This wasn't an engine for everyone. But for those who knew how to unlock its potential, it was bulletproof torque in a tuxedo. If you have ever felt that torque hit you in the chest like a slow-motion sledgehammer, you already know this engine wasn't built to impress the crowd. It was built to impress the pavement. Cadillac 500 V8. When Cadillac dropped the 500 cubic inch V8 in 1970, it wasn't trying to win drag races. It was trying to move mountains quietly with class. Rated at 400 horsepower and 550 pound-feet of torque, it wasn't just the biggest engine ever stuffed into a production car, it was also the smoothest sledgehammer Detroit ever built. This engine didn't roar. It purred like a lion wearing velvet slippers. You could be doing 70 on the freeway, give the pedal a gentle nudge, and suddenly you were doing 90 without spilling your coffee. There was no drama, no noise, just motion. Effortless, endless motion. One fan told us he had a 70 Eldorado with the 500 mildly warmed over with a Holly and some tuning. You didn't feel the speed, he said. You felt the road get out of your way. That's Cadillac 500 energy. But some leaked memos and insider whispers suggest there was a quiet conspiracy inside GM, an effort to bury the 500. Why? Because its raw, effortless torque embarrassed everything else in the lineup. It wasn't just powerful, it was too powerful, too smooth, too unstoppable. A Cadillac engineer once joked at a company picnic that motor was so smooth it made our test tracks feel like airport runways. And that made it dangerous to egos and budgets alike. By the late 70s, compression dropped emissions choked it out, and the mighty 500 was quietly retired. But the block stayed alive, lurking in hot rods, dually trucks, and even turbo builds. Some backyard builders coaxed out 600 horsepower without breaking a sweat. And with aluminum heads, it weighs less than a big block Chevy. Today, the Cadillac 500 isn't just remembered. It's respected. Not because it screamed, but because it delivered effortless dominance. And that's exactly why fans kept bringing it up again and again. That quiet power, that unstoppable pull, it earned its spot on this list the old-fashioned way by never letting anyone forget it. Chrysler 426 Hemi. In the world of muscle, few names carry the weight literally of the 426 Hemi. Nicknamed the Elephant for its massive size and even bigger performance, this wasn't just an engine. It was a declaration of war on every racetrack in America. Debuting at the Daytona 500 in February 1964, the race-spec 426 Hemi immediately crushed the field, securing a 1-2-3 finish for Plymouth. By June 1965, NASCAR declared it ineligible unless Chrysler sold production versions to the public, triggering one of the most controversial bans in motorsport history. Officially, they said it wasn't production-based, but let's call it what it really was: panic and politics. Whispers inside the pit lanes and back rooms said Ford and GM lobbyists were losing sleep. The Hemi wasn't just beating them, it was humiliating them. Some even claim NASCAR execs received suggestions to level the playing field or risk losing big-money sponsorships. So unless Chrysler agreed to sell it to the public, it was out. Chrysler said fine and dropped a 425-horsepower street version into the Plymouth Belvedere and Dodge Coronet. Just like that, America had a street-legal monster with hemispherical combustion chambers, cross-bolted mains, and a top end that sounded like Judgment Day. One former racer told us, "You didn't drive a Hemi. You just held on and prayed it didn't embarrass the guy next to you too hard." And here is the crazy part. Some of these Hemis are still running today, untouched. One collector in Arizona has a Charger that's logged over 500,000 miles on the original Hemi block, never rebuilt. Why? Because Chrysler overbuilt it like a bunker. Every part was tested beyond failure, then redesigned again. The rods, the pistons, even the oiling system was race-ready out of the box. The 426 Hemi wasn't cheap. It wasn't light, but it wasn't meant to be. It was designed to win whether on the oval or the boulevard. And that's why it's here. The 426 Hemi didn't just survive history. It rewrote it. Chevy ZL1 427. Some engines were designed for speed. The ZL1 427 was designed to break Wallet's records and competitors all in the same weekend. Born in 1969 and forged from aluminum and pure rebellion, this wasn't just a motor. It was a financial statement. Back then, you could walk into a Chevy dealership and buy a Camaro SS for around $3,000. But if you whispered the right COPO order into the right salesman's ear, you could spec a ZL1. Just one problem: it added $4,160 to the bill. For the engine alone, in 1969. That was second mortgage money. People thought you were nuts until they heard it run. This thing made 430 horsepower on paper, but everyone knew that number was a polite lie. Dynos showed 500 plus, without breaking a sweat. It ran 11s in the quarter mile with full interior working radio and enough factory steel to make a washing machine jealous. The best part, it was street legal barely. But here's where it gets shady. Chevy didn't promote it, didn't advertise it. Some internal memos even suggest the ZL1's existence was deliberately buried in obscure COPO paperwork. Why? Because it was faster than a Corvette. And in GM's corporate playbook, no car, not even a Camaro, was allowed to outshine the golden child. So instead of celebrating it, they tried to quietly make it disappear. But legends don't vanish. They get louder. Today, original ZL1s sell for $500,000 to over $1 million. They're collector gold, scarce feared and worshipped like muscle car royalty. So if you see one sitting quietly at a show, don't let the shiny paint fool you. That's not a car. That's a weapon with upholstery. Ford 427 SOHC Cammer. This wasn't just an engine. It was Ford's moonshot. A 427 cubic inch overhead cam monster designed to destroy anything in its path, especially on the NASCAR oval. In January 1964, just weeks before Daytona Speed Weeks, Ford unveiled the Cammer. A 427 cubic inch OHC monster designed to annihilate NASCAR competition. Within 6 months, Chrysler and GM allegedly pressured NASCAR leadership behind closed doors. By August 1964, the ban was official. Ford dropped millions into developing this beast. Dual overhead cams, massive heads, timing chain long enough to tow a boat. And they had one goal: to humiliate Chrysler and GM on their home turf. Problem was, it worked too well. Here's the conspiracy. As soon as the Cammer showed up, the other guys panicked. Rumor has it, Chrysler and GM told NASCAR, if Ford runs that engine, we walk. And just like that, the Cammer was banned before it ever turned a lap in anger. Official reason, not a production engine. Unofficial reason, too damn fast. One retired NASCAR official admitted years later, the Cammer wasn't just fast, it made the rest of the grid look obsolete. And some folks in Detroit didn't like that. Ford tried to pivot drag racing, boat racing, even street builds. But without a NASCAR crown, the SOHC was left wandering. A weapon without a war. A predator without a jungle. And that's what stings most. We could have had 700 horsepower streetcars back in 1970 if they hadn't been scared. Today, if you ever see a Cammer in the wild, it's a miracle. Most lives sealed away in private collections or hidden in shop corners like forbidden relics. But if you've ever heard one roar or dreamed of building one, you already know. This wasn't just an engine. It was the one they didn't want you to drive. You thought these engines were too powerful for America? Well, what if I told you they weren't the only ones? Rumors are still swirling about at least 5 more motors. Ones that never made it to production, silenced before the public ever heard a single rev. Some say blueprints were shredded. Others claim a few blocks were quietly buried, literally, under test tracks and locked warehouses. And one, well, let's just say, there's a declassified memo that vanished twice from GM's archives. Twice. So now it's your move. Got a favorite forbidden engine we didn't mention? Ever hear about one that was too good for the showroom floor? Tell us in the comments. We're collecting stories for part 2. The engines they tried to erase, and your clue might just help us finish the list. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories from the golden age of muscle.